You're watching the Run Freak YouTube channel. I'm Finlay, and this episode is on New Balance Rebel V5 running shoes, which have just been released. New Balance kindly sent us a pair for testing, so we'll talk through the updates and then go on to how they feel to run in. Hope you enjoy. The midsole is still a PEBA EVA blend, and this fuel cell foam is designed to deliver an ultra light and bouncy underfoot ride. But the main change to the Rebel V5 midsole is the stack height has gone up and the width of the base has also increased. So that means there's a lot more protection underneath your feet. And this increase in cushioning is reflected in the weight. The men's now sit at 227 grams, which is roughly a 30 gram increase on the previous version, and the women sit at 180 grams, which is around a 20 to 22 gram increase in weight. However, at these weights, the Rebel are still considered to be ultra lightweight running shoes. And very similar to the previous version, the geometric shaping of the midsole is designed to unlock more energy return and increase the stability of the midsole. It's also fair to say that this looks pretty eye-catching, very sleek design, and that's very in keeping with what the Rebel are best suited to. Interestingly, on the outsole, there's a little bit more rubber in the forefoot section and a little bit less in the midfoot area now, but that should hopefully increase traction at toe off, particularly when you're going around corners at pace. What is interesting is you can see this exposed fuel cell foam here is actually starting to wear away quite quickly. So for heel strikers or those of you who are quite prominent on that lateral edge of the shoe, just be aware that there's not lots of outsole rubber there and you may see that part of the midsole start to wear down a little bit quicker. Now the upper still features New Balance's race-inspired FantomFit design, and that means it has some really nice design features such as the seamless overlays, so that not only keeps the weight down because stitching adds a lot of weight to an upper, it removes those points of friction, so hopefully you're not going to experience any rubbing. But there's a couple of really key changes to the Rebel V5 upper. First of all, the heel counter around the heel collar, there's a lot more structure and a lot more padding around that section of the shoe. And while it's still pretty thin, there is now some padding on the tongue. The Rebel V4 running shoes tongue was essentially like paper. So this now actually can offset some of that lace pressure and you don't need to be so specific with how you tie up the shoe. So in general terms, the upper does offer a lot more support and structure for your feet. And it's fair to say that this probably also adds a little bit of weight to the Rebel V5 running shoes' increased weight. On to the performance then, and let's start with the fit because we've just talked about the upper. The forefoot still offers a nice accommodating fit, but like the previous version, it does come up a bit short in length. And some runners may get away with their normal running shoe size, but I think the chances are most runners will need to opt for half a size bigger than their normal running shoe size. And if you don't, you might just feel that your toes hitting off the end of the shoe. And it's really important that you have ample space in your toe box when you're running, particularly at pace, because if your feet can't splay out, then you're actually going to reduce the power output of the whole structure. So really important you have that space. Personally, if you're trying to get a comparison to another New Balance model, I find that the Rebel fits half a size smaller than the 1080. So I'm always a normal running shoe size in the 1080, but in the Rebel, that half a size bigger just translates into so much more comfort. So if you can obviously go into a shop and try them on and see for yourself, that's brilliant. But if you are ordering online from a website, then I would err on the side of caution and go for that half a size bigger. And to confirm, the heel counter offers a lot more security and a lot more support. So while it still feels light and relatively stripped back, it offers a much more appropriate and comfortable feel for everyday miles. So onto the midsole. Underfoot, the cushioning feels a lot more substantial and a lot plusher. for the avoidance of doubt, this does not feel like an ultra soft, high stacked max cushion midsole, and it's not meant to. But we did advise against using the Rebel V4 running shoes for your easy pace miles. And as popular as that model was, it just probably lacked the protection you needed to feel comfortable, at least for a lot of runners, feel comfortable for those slower paced miles. However, the increased cushioning in the V5 completely changes the performance at that type of intensity. The midsole and cushioning genuinely feels comfortable when you're moving at slower speeds and offers more than enough protection to take the impact out of landing, particularly for heel strikers as well. And even though that stack height has increased and the midsole feels softer and plusher, that increase in base net, so the width of the midsole base, has ensured that it still offers a very stable underfoot feel. There's no doubt about it that the Rebel still feels at its best when you're running at steady paces. And yes, while it's gained a little bit of weight and softness, it still feels very light underfoot and very bouncy, which ultimately makes it easier to maintain your pace. And that increase in protection arguably just makes it a more versatile shoe because it's better for those longer steady pace runs. And that really just, that word there, best, it is best for the steady pace runs. That's really where we see the strength of the Rebel V5 running shoes on those days when you're trying to run at a very specific pace, but something that's very sustainable. You're not necessarily classifying it as a hard session, but you are trying to go out there and run with a really specific purpose. That's when this midsole really comes into its own. If you start running a bit closer to threshold, those tempo efforts, you will still find that the cushioning performs relatively well. However, if you're used to a plated model and you use a plated running shoe for that type of session, you'll likely find that that sort of intensity is the ceiling of this midsole, and arguably you'll probably find that your lower leg area is just working a little bit harder, so you might notice a little bit more activation, a little bit more work going through your calf area in particular. But with that in mind, there's obviously a potential benefit for using the Rebel for some of those tempo sessions, some of those harder miles, because if you use a plated model for all of those runs, there is the chance that you can get a bit reliant on that geometry, and that could lead to potential overuse injuries higher up the connected chain, so around the hip area, the hamstring insertion point, and it might just mean that lazy is the wrong word, but you're not using so much of what you have at your disposal, particularly the Achilles and the calf muscles. So the key is that while this midsole is still offering some help when you're trying to run faster, because reducing the weight of a shoe, increasing the energy return in a midsole will have some favorable benefits for your biomechanics, it's not going to significantly alter your biomechanics, and it's not going to then therefore lead to significant improvements in running economy. So that's a real key, that using the shoe for some of those harder sessions might help lead to a greater all-round development. And this intensity is probably the tipping point of the cushioning. While you can definitely use it for some pickups, some strides, if you're doing a bit of a fartlek session, it might feel good for that. But a plated model is just going to offer so much more performance during a high intensity interval session when you're really trying to hit those hard paces. And it's likely that your recovery time from those high intensity interval sessions is going to be reduced running on a plated model in comparison to the Rebel V5. If you were to use this for a VO2 max session or a classic 5x1K, yes, you might feel okay during the session, but you're really going to feel that the next day. In summary then, it's pretty simple. The Rebel V5 running shoes are just a much more complete version than the previous model. And yes, we talked about it earlier, as popular as the V4 were, and they were hailed as everyday mileage running shoes, they weren't really that appropriate for easy pace miles. But yes, while there are definitely some better options out there for those easy miles, this can definitely now cope with that level of intensity, and that performance at those steadier tempo efforts hasn't been compromised, which is a very impressive thing to have been achieved. So the good news is that means if you are the type of runner who genuinely wants one running shoe that you can do all of your sessions in, then you can potentially use a Rebel in that way, and it's probably one of the best, most versatile models out there. The only limitation that you probably have to be aware of is that because of the weight reduction we talked earlier about how that soft fuel cell foam is wearing away quite quickly there, these aren't going to offer maximum durability. So you just might need to be prepared to change your shoes a little bit sooner than you may otherwise if you were rotating between different pairs, or you had something that was a little bit more built up, a little bit more cushioned, and had some more outsole rubber on it. But just touching on this point as well, if you're the type of person who travels a lot and you're going away and you want a light pair of shoes that you can pack away and you can decide on the morning or the day what type of session you're going to do, and you don't want to be limited by the footwear that you've brought with you, that's where this could also be a fantastic option, because you can go out and genuinely do pretty much any type of run in the Rebel and feel like you're going to get a lot of performance back from the shoe. But our advice is, if you really want to get the most out of the Rebel V5 running shoes, then you probably want to be rotating it with a couple of other models. And that's because the light, fast and connected feel delivers the best performance on those steady run days and those tempo miles. Yes, if your legs are feeling very fresh, you're feeling good, you will enjoy using these for those easy pace miles. But if your legs are really tired, let's say after a long day at work, or it's the day after a hard interval session, then this just isn't going to offer you the help that you probably need. That's when a higher stack, softer midsole is going to feel, in theory, a lot more comfortable and also help mitigate the chances of things feeling pretty sore and pretty tired. So again, just to reinforce that, if you can find place for this in your shoe rotation, then you're probably going to feel a lot of benefits from using this, because arguably the Rebel are one of the strongest options to choose in that category of lightweight performance shoes that will feel best when you're trying to run at that steady intensity. And that brings me to the end of this review. Hopefully we've answered all your questions and what you'd like to know on the Rebel V5 running shoes. But if not, please comment on the episode and we will get back to you as soon as we can. As ever, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. See you soon.